Hey everyone, this is the Mind of Lilith, and thank you for joining me for this episode of Think Peace. I am going to be talking about Deion Sanders' decision to leave Jackson State, which is an HBCU, to go to a predominantly white institution, CU Boulder, as the head coach. So I don't know much about sports and football in general, but I have been following this story because Deion Sanders expressed interest in revitalizing the athletic programs at HBCUs because over the past several decades, predominantly white institutions have pretty much poached the best talent from these black schools. In the 70s and 60s, even prior to that, national athletics programs and even professional sports teams were segregated largely. Okay, you had some outliers, some exceptional black players that were allowed to play in the professionals, but by and large, many professional black athletes were relegated to the Negro leagues in a sense, okay? And so in the 70s, the predominantly white institutions realized that these black men are very talented and we can make a lot of money off of these Negroes. So they began to poach the best talent from these HBCUs in an effort to integrate. Whenever black people integrate with white society, we get weaker, as you guys know this. When we assimilate and we integrate, we get weaker as a people. That's just what it is. So as a result, HBCUs are financially strained and have been for decades because they don't have the sports teams to help finance the institution. Over the past couple of days, Deion has received some support and a lot of hate from the black community because of his decision to leave Jackson State. And I understand the disappointment, but I don't think that it's fair to say that he was using HBCUs as a leg up to become a coach, okay? So I'm going to read an article from Fortune magazine. And the article basically describes the phenomena of these institutions hiring exceptional black talent to fix a broken system. So the magic Negro is supposed to come along and fix all of the problems within the organization that have existed for decades or for years even. So the title of the article is Black Women and the Glass Cliff. I was supposed to bring some kind of black girl magic. Now, even though this article is about women in positions of power, black women in particular, I want you guys to think about what Deion Sanders was expected to do as the head coach of an HBCU that had been underfinanced for decades, okay? Deion Sanders was expected to come in by himself and change a failing system. So I'm going to read the article. And the article is by L'Oreal Thompson Payson, okay? It starts by saying double standards and high expectations create a recipe for failure. Quote, I was supposed to bring some black girl magic and that was unfair to me because I was really excited about this opportunity, says Hartz, who had since built a successful career as an author, speaker, and workplace and equity consultant. But once I found out what it really entailed, I realized it was a battle I was not going to win. I honestly believe that Deion Sanders bit off more than he could chew. I think that he underestimated the extent of the structural decay that these institutions suffered from for the past several decades. I think he thought he was going to come in and, bring his energy and his passion and his connects and his money and his fame and turn the whole system around. I think he overestimated his abilities, which is why after a couple years, he decided to leave. But let me continue with the article. Hart's experience, which she documents in her best-selling books, The Memo and The Right Within, is part of the phenomenon known in some circles as the glass cliff, wherein women, specifically those from underrepresented communities, are promoted into leadership positions during times of crisis and given a sometimes impossible task of fixing a broken culture. It's similar to his cousin, the glass ceiling, a tyrant metaphor used to describe the invisible barrier women frequently hit when climbing the corporate ranks. Now, this phenomenon just doesn't happen in corporate America. It also happens in politics. What happened in 2008? And comedians will make jokes about this, and I will talk about this with my friends. In 2008, we elected the first black president. Now, I'm not a big fan of his, but the first black president was elected when we were entering the worst recession since 1929, okay? They needed the magic Negro to come and pick up all the pieces that had been dropped by decades of mismanagement, incompetence, deception, and downright corruption. You guys who are old enough remember what happened, right? He was supposed to be the magic Negro and turn chitlins into soul food, okay? So the article continues, following the murder of George Floyd in the summer of 2020, Many companies scrambled to diversify their workforces, and as a result, a number of Black women were promoted into high-profile roles. 2 years later, some of these women have moved on to other jobs. One need look no further than the push to diversify in media for a wealth of examples. In July 2020, Lisa Lucas was tapped to be the publisher at Pantheon, an imprint at Penguin Random House. Meanwhile, at Simon & Schuster, Dana Kennedy was hired as a senior vice president and publisher. Both were the first Black publishers to lead the nearly 100-year-old companies. In August of that same summer, Don Davis took over as editor-in-chief of Bon Appetit, and the following February, Rashida Jones became the president of MSNBC, the first Black woman to run a cable news channel. This is why I don't like these symbolic firsts. Whenever the media celebrates the first Black this, first is solitary. It means that this is an individual achievement, but we're supposed to collectively celebrate a person's individual achievement as if it represents some sort of paradigm systemic shift, and it does not. So, 2 years to the date, however, Kennedy stepped down from her role to focus on her writing. She isn't the only one to step away from the glass cliff. Refinery 29's global editor-in-chief Simone Oliver also left 2 years into her role to pursue other opportunities, a Vice Media Group spokesperson told Digiday in July 2022. This fall, she started a new role as Senior Vice President, Digital Content at BET. When Oliver joined Refinery 29 in September 2020, it was 3 months after the publication's co-founder and global editor-in-chief Christine Barbaric had resigned amid public outcry from employees about workplace discrimination and lack of racial diversity. In a now deleted Instagram post, Barbaric wrote, "I've read and taken in the raw and personal accounts of Black women and women of color regarding their experiences inside our company at Refinery 29. Why aren't Black men mentioned here? Why is this article not mentioning Black men?" I guess that's another topic for another day. Okay. So I will be stepping aside in my role at R29 to help diversify our leadership and editorial and ensure this brand and the people it touches can spark a new defining chapter. End quote. Okay. Oliver is a classic example of a Black woman being called in to clean up a mess she didn't create. When she joined Refinery 29, it was less than a year after it had been acquired by Vice Media Group. The once high-flying women's media site had been through 3 rounds of layoffs in as many years. Oliver did not respond to our request to be interviewed for this story. It is not equitable to put Black women and Deion Sanders, in positions where they're not being supported, said Hartz. It is unfortunate that a lot of us are put in positions to turn water into wine. And as I said earlier, Deion Sanders was hired to turn chitlins into soul food. Okay? Back to the article. While businesses have become more cognizant of the need for diversity in leadership since the racial reckoning of 2020, many are also expecting immediate results, which is a recipe for disaster, says Kyrie Kyles, CEO of YR Media, a national youth-led media nonprofit based out of Oakland. Quote, "You're not just tackling a business need, you're also being asked to tackle and transform culture," she says. "You're already coming in at a deficit because you're coming in at a tumultuous time for all organizations and media in particular. And on top of that, the expectations are often highly unrealistic. This usually happens to Black people who are selected for positions of power. In the 80s, we had our first Black mayor, David Dinkins. After the economy basically collapsed, we had a drug epidemic, a crime epidemic. There were no jobs. There was nothing. It was social collapse. And now we have a first Black mayor. What happened in New York City in 2020? We elect the second Black mayor, Eric Adams. After what? COVID hit. And again, the city's in economic downturn. The crime is going up, right? There's less income coming from corporations because a lot of them have decided to leave New York and set up shop in another state that has a lower cost of living, okay? So anyway, the article continues. In Shonda Rhimes' New York Times bestselling memoir, Yeah, Yes, the showrunner talks about the pressure she felt being what she called the FOD, first, only, different. When you're an FOD, she writes, you are saddled with the burden of extra responsibility, whether you want it or not. That's why I said I don't really celebrate the first symbolic victories of black people, okay? Kamala Harris being the first black vice president. That means nothing if she has no power. It's just tokenism to me. I don't think anyone should have to think that Kyle said of the double standard and high expectations facing black women and men, okay? I'm just saying and men. Why can't Stacey Abrams just run for public office? She's going to run for public office, change perceptions and stereotypes, and fix a broken voter suppression system all at the same time. That's not something that will be asked of her counterpart. And making mistakes? Forget about it. As Rhimes writes in her book, you don't get second chances, not when you're an FOD. Second chances are for future generations. That is what you are building when you're an FOD, second chances. And of course, I'm going to say this. If you want to be exalted for being the FOD, then you're going to take on the responsibility of carrying the weight of the community on your shoulders. If you want the community to praise you for being the first black to do this, then the community is going to hold you accountable to adhering to a certain standard of performance that would make it easier for black people coming up behind you to apply for those same positions. Okay? So being the first comes with tremendous pressure to get it right and perform perfection at all times, no matter what Rhyme says. We're so worried about excelling because we realize we're not just being judged as individuals, we're being judged as part of a collective. Again, if you want the collective to celebrate your victory, right, and you want our collective energies to put you on a pedestal, then you're going to be held responsible for the collective. Stop talking about being the first black this and the first black that if you don't want the target on your back. Instead of celebrating when you first get hired, I'm the first this, how about you celebrate accomplishing certain goals once you get the position? Then it seems less attention seeking, okay? So anyway, instead, black women need the same room to fail and grace to rebound as their white male counterparts, which is true. Black men need it also. Anyway, just look at WeWork founder Adam Neumann's $350 million comeback, which has been described as a slap in the face to female founders and founders of color, seeing as the amount is more than $324 million raised by all U.S. black founded startups combined in the second quarter of this year. So Adam Neumann, who was the failed WeWork founder, I think he filed for bankruptcy. He basically raised more money than all BIPOC black and brown entrepreneurs in the in the second quarter of this year. That one white man did that. That's called white privilege, okay? And it's also called untouchable privilege too. So anyway, we have to be given the same opportunities and chances as our white male counterparts across corporate America, says Kyles. A lot of times you'll see serial leaders or entrepreneurs who do something and it may not go perfectly, but they're still allowed to fight another day, try something else, and go into a different industry. Meanwhile, if we do that, it's painted as a failure and it paints a negative picture for the person coming behind us. And Deion Sanders is kind of going through this too. Even though he was very successful as the head coach of Jackson State, the fact that he's left so abruptly is leaving the bad taste in the mouth of the black community. I'm going to say this. If you moved from the ghetto to a nicer neighborhood after you had the money to do so, you're in no position to judge Deion Sanders for what he did. Even if you didn't do that, you still can't judge him. But many of our people celebrate the fact that they have the resources to purchase their first home in a nice neighborhood, okay? They have an HOA. They're able to enjoy the fruits of their success, right? But now some of these people are expecting this very talented, intelligent, and hardworking man to compromise his career aspirations to save a failing system. The reason why Jackson State is struggling is not because of him. It's because of decades of mismanagement and structural racism. Over the past summer, some parts of Mississippi did not even have damn water. That is not his fault. And what happens is when you have a country or even a business that does not invest in its own, that does not value its own people, its own staff, you're going to experience what we call brain drain. The best of the best are going to be poached by other organizations who have the resources to fairly compensate highly skilled people. That is the name of the game. This is like asking Deion Sanders to stay in an abusive relationship. Suppose you're a woman dating a man who doesn't protect you, doesn't provide for you. You're working all day, paying half the bills, doing all the housework, rearing the children by yourself. Your husband comes in or your boyfriend comes in and he wants a hot meal and he's paying half the bills, but you're doing all the work, right? And then a man comes along that's willing to give you a better deal. You don't have to pay any bills. Just take care of the house, right? Or if you want to keep working, we can do the housework together. You would be a fool to stay in an unfair relationship where your needs aren't being met versus choosing a partner who values you, who respects you, who honors your time and your energy and your resources. And so they want to make your life easier. CU Boulder has resources that Jackson State does not. And although, again, it is bittersweet that he's leaving because I understand what he was trying to do. I think he bit off more than he could chew, honestly. But the state of Mississippi does not deserve Deion Sanders because their racism has put them in this position to lose valuable talent. Because they want to maintain the status quo, they want to uphold systemic racism, right? They want to keep poor blacks and poor whites enslaved. Because that's the case, you're going to lose the opportunity to earn revenue from institutions that you're not investing in, okay? These racists in Mississippi want Deion Sanders to bring revenue to the state, okay? They want the magic Negro to save the state from decades, from centuries of systemic racism. Yes, Jackson State would also benefit from a robust athletics program. That's absolutely true. But the state of Mississippi would benefit also. And so they're looking for this magic Negro to fix systemic problems that they've created because of their racism and hatred. Okay? So they don't deserve him. Sorry. Now, the irony is, one of the main reasons why CU Boulder has the resources that it does is because of black athletes. Predominantly white institutions like CU Boulder is using black talent to poach black talent from HBCUs. Let me use the money that we've earned through our black athletics program. That's what they are. From these black athletes to attract other black talent from HBCUs. That's the name of the game. And that's why Deion's decision is kind of sort of a catch-22 because he's pretty much turning his back on, at this point, he's doing it. He may come back in a few years with more experience and more resources. But he's pretty much turning his back or stepping away from his initial objective. And sometimes you have to take a step back to move forward. So let me continue with the article. To help combat the glass cliff facing black women leaders, Kyle argues that we should not only be brought into leadership roles in times of crisis, there also needs to be a real intentionality and fair parameters in place. We should be brought in when things are going well so that we can take it to the next level, she says. But guess what? When things are going well, white people don't want to share their power with you. They only want you to save them when they've sabotaged shit. Okay? They don't want you to benefit from when they're doing things right. They want you to save them when they've done things wrong. That's just how it works. Okay? It's not always the case because all white people aren't racist. I'm not saying that. But that's how many of these institutions are run. Okay? So, but you have when you're spending time doing cleanup, you can't grow. Exactly. But you have investors and advertisers who are expecting growth. They're not recognizing that you are brought in literally to clean up someone else's mess. The same thing happened with Obama. I have also gone through this myself. I have been hired as a consultant to improve performance outcomes. But in order for me to accomplish that, some significant cultural changes had to be made to the organization. And unfortunately, a lot of leadership they would try to sabotage me behind the scenes because they were threatened by the changes I was trying to implement because their positions would be put in jeopardy. Why? Because they were the problem. They were the problem. I'm going to talk about that later on today with the Real Housewives of Potomac, okay? Anyway, so yeah, you have investors and advertisers who are expecting growth. They're not recognizing that you're brought in literally to clean up someone else's mess. Hearts also believe more transparency about what's involved in a role could go a long way towards increasing recruitment and retention. Oftentimes when we're hired, we're not given the full breadth and scope of what's really required to be successful in a role. Absolutely not. They don't want to train you in a way that will give you the knowledge to truly change things. They want you to put a band-aid on situations so that they can maintain the status quo and remove you from your position after you've successfully saved the company. That's the job. Okay. So oftentimes when we're hired, it's not enough to just put a black woman in a position if she's not supported in resources, dollars, and sponsorships, just like what Deion Sanders was going through. These tools must be available to her so she can be successful. Equally important is having adequate resources, whether it's an actual budget to create and run a team, hire an executive coach, or pursue professional development opportunities, not to mention mental and emotional support. Yes, not having enough support, not having enough resources, having to spend your own money, basically pushing a boulder up a hill is mentally taxing. Deion Sanders went through a whole lot in the past year. He almost lost his leg, okay? And he still came back and led the team to victory, right? He was dedicated. He put in his blood, sweat, and tears literally to lead the team to victory and success. He gave them a blueprint. That's what consultants are supposed to do. I'm not saying that's what his role was, but consultants are often hired to analyze, design, develop, implement, and evaluate the effectiveness of new strategies and procedures. That is what Deion Sanders did. He gave them a blueprint to follow. And if they can't follow the blueprint, that's another problem. He is not a messiah, okay? We got to get out of that messiah complex too, where one man is supposed to save us from ourselves. He gave these people the tools, the knowledge, the resources, and the blueprint to follow through on what he started. Now, they're at a disadvantage because they don't have the resources. That's not his fault. They will still have that problem 4, 5, and 6 years from now because it's a structural, systemic issue. It is not his problem to solve by himself. It is not fair to put that on him like that. Anyway, back to the article. When we finally reach that rung on the ladder, we ask ourselves, is it really worth it? Hart says of the workplace trauma and microaggressions Black women endure as they advance in their careers. Then we start to center our own mental health and make decisions about the correct seat for us at this time in our lives. Exactly. So that's why this whole symbolic victory, I'm the first Black this, it means nothing because it's veneer. It's the decadent veil, as Antonio Moore would say. Okay, a lot of these women in leadership positions are shuffled around. Listen, I'll get into that later. There's a lot of politics involved with who is selected for leadership roles in the Black community too. Trust and believe that, okay? So anyway, indeed, the strong Black woman trope, a perception that Black women are naturally strong, resilient, self-contained, and self-sacrificing, as named in a 2014 study, is detrimental to our mental health. Black women are also holding themselves to the same standards. That's why they celebrate getting those positions, right? The leadership roles, which is fine, but that shouldn't be your whole identity. The study revealed that steadfast endorsement of this trope among Black women has been shown to increase the relationship between stress and depressive symptoms. A few months ago, I said that many Black women use their corporate titles the same way that Black men use trophies for girlfriends as trophies. So in the Black community, because we have low social power, Black men use women to feel validated, and a lot of Black women use their career titles to also feel validated. And at that point, they feel like they've earned respect. I'm a C-level executive. I own this. I have that. Look at what I've earned for myself. Now you have no choice but to value and respect me. Okay? That's another complex we're going to have to discuss on this channel, because a lot of the pressures Black women put on themselves to be successful and to be protectors and providers and completely self-sufficient without anyone's support, it's causing mental health issues in our community. Period. All right. So additionally, the pressure to be perceived as perfect and have it all together can lead many Black women in leadership positions to put themselves and their well-being on the bottom of their already lengthy to-do lists. It's because Black women are powerful. We are known as strong. We are given all sorts of superhuman qualities, but none of the superhuman support that should come with that, said Kyles. We need to be able to say, hey, I need a break, instead of being asked to come in and work miracles and do it without any form of complaint. That is an unrealistic expectation to place anyone, and especially women of color. At the end of the day, if the position you're in is no longer serving you, it may be time to step away without shame. It may be time to step away without shame. I've had to do this more than once. And Deion Sanders apparently has had to do the same thing, okay? He put his heart into it. You could tell based on the outcomes. Look at how his work ethic and his energy impacted those children in that program. Not children, the athletes in that program. He wasn't phoning it in. He was 10 toes down or 8 toes down, right? So now he's 8 toes down and there's no running water. He has to fight tooth and nail for the bare necessities for these kids. Meanwhile, the PWIs, everything is handed to them. Everything is not even handed to them. They have a much easier time getting what they need. And so now it's like, what is he supposed to do? Struggle and suffer forever because of what? Structural racism that's existed for decades? I think that there's a deeper reason why he left. I think that at some point he realized that this was a battle he could not fix, because this level of mismanagement and incompetence and corruption is deliberate. It's been there for decades. I think that he hit a glass ceiling or a glass wall. It's sort of like mayors who come in trying to fix the city and try to clean the crime up, and then they realize that the crime actually is profitable for the city. Homelessness is profitable for the city. So the corporate interests of the city that they've been elected to serve have a vested interest in maintaining a certain level of dysfunction and poverty per the capitalistic model that exploits the poor. I think he may have realized that at some point. And he may have realized that this is not just about HBCUs. No, they don't want the HBCUs to be able to compete against PWIs. There's politics involved here. He cannot win against that by himself. I think he decided to leave because he realized this was an uphill battle. And it may be a strategic move for him. He is going to learn certain things from PWIs that he could use in the future to help HBCUs develop their athletic programs. I'm sure of it. I'm not saying that he's going to do that, but he can use that as a tool later on in his career. But he has to take a step back to move forward. I don't think he's doing this selfishly. This man was too impassioned. I don't think he's not a quitter. I think he realized the politics of of Mississippi, the state itself. The politics of structural racism requires that a certain level of poverty and powerlessness is maintained. If he was doing what he was supposed to do, and he could have, they don't want the HBCUs to compete against these white institutions. That's going to take money out of their pockets. He had to leave. That's what I'm thinking. He realized, I cannot do this by myself. As I'm thinking about it now, like, why would this man, because he was so impassioned about it. I saw him speaking about it on a podcast with, what's his name? Ocho Cinco and them. What is it called? I forgot. I saw him speaking about it a year ago. He was so impassioned about it. I think he ran into some politics, behind the scenes shit, like, yo, we don't want you building up these Negro schools to take money out of our pockets. And he said, let me get the fuck up out of here. Let me go as far away from here as possible, right? They came to him. I think he made the right choice for now, because as the head coach of CU, he can learn things and he can earn money and he can establish contacts that could potentially be used to help HBCUs in the future. He don't have enough right now. This is an uphill battle for him. But ultimately, I honestly believe that the PWIs in the area had a conversation about what this man was capable of doing. We have to pull this man out of here before he becomes too powerful and these HBCUs can now compete against PWIs for the best talent. That's what I think really happened. Okay? Since we're going to keep it a buck here, I think he was forced to leave, or he was offered a position as a strategy to make sure he did not build up these HBCUs the way that he wanted to. That's what I honestly think. And hopefully he's smart enough to know this, if that's what really happened. Anyway, the article continues. At the end of the day, if the position you're in is no longer serving you, it may be time to step away without shame. The issue when you're the first or the only is that to many, you represent an entire industry, Kennedy told the New York Times in July. And I embrace that. However, it made it harder to make a decision that I felt was right for me. We've been conditioned to not rock the boat and just be thankful for what we get. And this is the thing with Deion Sanders. People are acting like it was easy for him to make this choice. It was not easy for him to do this. You saw how hard he worked with those kids. Okay, he tried to establish a family bond with the kids. He was, acting as a father figure, right? He modeled the attitudes and behaviors that he wanted them to not just use on the football field, but in life. He was trying to teach them about life, okay? And so, it's bittersweet. And I'm sad that he's leaving, but I think he had to go. I don't think he had a choice. I think the politics of the South, and I think the politics of PWIs when it comes to these sports, they don't play when it comes to their money. You saw what happened when he managed to attract some top talent to Jackson State. He was messing with their money. And so now let's take you far away to the other side of the country where you're far away from these Negroes. Okay? And we'll pay you 10 times what you're making now. We'll make your life a whole lot easier. Just don't make our rich white lives harder by building up these poor black underfunded institutions to be competitors for your talent. Yes, you are farmers for us. We need you black baby mamas and daddies to keep farming athletes for us, and we'll take them to our schools and we'll give them a white girlfriend and a couple $1 million a year, and they've made it. Just keep farming the poor black babies for us. As long as the babies stay poor and black, we can continue to exploit them. We can continue to farm them for cheap. Okay? Now we should be talking about that, not him leaving. Why did he leave? Oh, for more money and for whatever. He was using them as a leg up. No, I don't think that's what it was. It's a lot more sophisticated than that when it comes to sports. Sports and politics and money are always intertwined. We saw what happened with Muhammad Ali in the 60s. We just saw what happened with Kyrie Irving. We saw what happened with, what's his name, the dude in football. Colin Kaepernick. Sports, money, and politics are always intertwined. All right, I'm going to read the rest of the article and then I'll close it out. I think we're in a position now, for black women in particular, where we realize we do have options and we don't have to make everything work. We can actually go places where we can thrive and feel supported. I think that Deion Sanders will feel supported. I think he will initially at this CSU or CU Boulder. But trust and believe, once he serves his purpose, they will get rid of him. Once he gives them the blueprints to follow, right, to make a championship team, and he turns things around for them, they'll get rid of him. They will. They'll find some reason to get rid of him. Okay? That's what I believe. All right? So anyway, I'm going to leave it there. I look forward to reading your comments. If you want to order a personal astrology or tarot reading, you can go to mindoflilith.com, fill out the order entry form, submit payment via CashApp or Stripe, and I'll have your reading sent to you within 2-3 business days. I have some new options available for readings. So if you're interested in looking at that, just go to the website and just check it out. I look forward to reading your feedback again. Please like, share, and subscribe, and I'll speak to you soon.